Hello, welcome to the New Stack Makers, a podcast where we talk about at-scale application development, deployment, and management. Hi, I'm Alex Williams, founder and editor-in-chief of the New Stack. Justin Johnson is one of those community managers you should know. I had the chance to see him at the Open Source Leadership Summit. I was so excited to see Justin, and I said, please come sit down with me and do a recording. I want to hear about what you're doing. I want to hear about this StackPath company. Just a little bit about StackPath. You should check this company out. I think they're going to be pretty interesting. They're basically using open source to glue all these different companies that they acquired into one platform to serve out at the edge. I'll let Justin tell you more about it in this episode of the New Stack Makers from the Open Source Leadership Summit. Coming up, the New Stack will be live at Cloud Foundry Summit, ChefConf, and KubeCon, plus Cloud Native Con. We'll be podcasting, hosting Pancake Breakfast, and spending a lot of time talking with people. We love our work. Thanks to all our sponsors who make our work possible here at the New Stack. Hey, Alex Williams of the New Stack here at the Open Source Leadership Summit. And who walks up? My old friend, Justin. Justin, how are you? It's good.
Well. I'm very well.
Yeah, so we're going to have to pass the mic back and forth because this mic is kind of sensitive. We did get the gains, I think, working. So we're now live. I'm going to be talking to people here at the Open Source Leadership Summit. Justin, I've known past from his days when he worked at Keen, and now you're working with a company called StackPath.
StackPath. Yeah, StackPath.
And what is StackPath?
StackPath is a secure edge services company. So we own and operate a really large global network that helps companies secure their data and get their data and anything really to their users and devices.
What's the gap now? What is that gap? What are the tool sets that have been defined already for this type of, deployment? There's some out there, but I'm curious on what the gaps are in those tool sets.
Yeah. So the most established technology in this space is a CDN. It's been around for a long time. It's was pioneered and is now just a standard way to do business. We're applying CDN style strategies to more advanced things like edge compute, a lot of talk around serverless and doing scripts, and also containerization. So you can bring full applications closer to your users and not just content. What that does is it allows you to take the load off of your cloud services and offerings, and also distribute that to the edge, but also bring down costs overall so that you're not all processing in one spot.
Okay, so you're not all processing in one spot, and that is an issue now. Is processing happening in one spot? What happens when the processing does just become done in one spot?
So the issue is dependent on the use case. So it's not going to be the same for every company. In the case of IoT applications, sometimes these devices can't be really chatty because they don't have a lot of power. So they need to operate in a very low amount of energy, and getting your compute resources as close to the device as possible means that you have to make fewer round trips or less distance. So it's literally just like a distance from device problem. In cases where you're processing really, really large amounts of data, like live streaming video, the further you get away from the user, the more latency, jitter, and loss you have. And so you bring that content closer to the user, then you have less chance of problems.
It's interesting. It brings up kind of discussions about, how then do you distribute, right? All those different points of, those different events, really, right?
Yeah, and oftentimes too, if you're a global internet company, right, certain types of content or applications aren't going to be used in like some areas of the world. So if you can say, we need eventual consistency at our data centers to manage everything, but we know that this application is going to be used in Europe and not in the United States, why would you have all of your Europe traffic go back to your United States locations?
Yeah, it's a question about CMSs overall too. Like CMSs, often rely on that kind of structure, right? We see that all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's important for there to be orchestration, right? Because then systems just break. But if you orchestrate correctly, then you can offload compute and resources to the places where it just needs to be.
So is that kind of what you do? You help, is it you provide a platform to distribute that load?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can write code against our APIs to manage all of your content or applications across our whole network. And we handle that management.
Okay. So tell us then about, the infrastructure that you're developing and what brings you to an event like this, Open Source Leadership Summit.
So we started the company by raising quite a bit of money and buying a variety of companies, a couple CDNs, a couple software companies, and security companies. And we're investing in that infrastructure, creating new infrastructure, and rewriting the software so that we can bring all of it together as a single platform. So right now, it's not all organized as a single platform, and that's kind of where we're going. And we're using a lot of open source technologies to get there. So I come to these events to hear from leaders in the open source community about what's been working well for companies, and also just to talk to other industry folks about open source in general and see how we can support as an organization some of the projects that we're using in just the community.
Tell me about the breakdown of those acquisitions.
Okay. So the first company we acquired was Max CDN. Are you familiar with Max CDN? So they're a CDN that's focused on mostly HTTP traffic, so optimizing websites. They have lots of customers.
So there's a CDN, there's a what else?
A WAF,
A WAF.
a VPN company,
Okay.
and then another CDN.
Okay. What's the difference in the other CDN?
The other CDN is Highwinds, and it's focused more on distributing larger files.
Okay.
So video processing or patching to devices. An example is we are a vendor to Microsoft to do patches to Xbox.
Okay, so that helps then. Oh, I see. So Xbox patches then those Xboxes are autonomous, actually, right? So you're thinking about how do you create kind of a CDN for all these autonomous items, really wherever they could be.
Yeah, so they patch all of the boxes at once, and so it requires a huge amount of bandwidth, and we distribute the patches close to the devices so that all of our POPs are distributing equally to the different devices across the world, as opposed to just one data center, one big pipe.
So what you've been doing is like gluing these frameworks together. How are you gluing them together? What are the things that you're doing in the architecture?
So it's really around virtualization. CDNs traditionally have hardware that's that the CDN is depending on for specific things. So we're virtualizing, everything, routers, load balancers, and making it so that we can have elastic services across all of our infrastructure. That's a process that requires some rewriting, and we have to continue to support our customers. So it takes a lot of effort, and our engineering team is pretty amazing.
So how is open source playing into your overall organization? How you're developing, a model for the platform?
Some things we're rolling our own, and some things we're choosing to use.
Just because the tools aren't out there?
Because the things that we're doing are so specific to our network that it's more optimized for us to just write code that could be used for one thing. But a lot of things, like for container orchestration, we're using Kubernetes, for example, and we're using Docker. We're using a Linux virtual machine to do a lot of the hardware virtualization. Yeah.
So the hardware virtualization is another story in itself. Sure. Yeah, talk to me a little bit about that, because the hardware is changing so rapidly, right? We're seeing, I was talking to someone yesterday who was saying they're seeing like AMD chipsets being built into kind of like, as the sensors for, defining kind of like AI, software platforms, right?
Fascinating stuff in the chip world right now. That's really interesting. So we want to, instead of say purchasing hardware routers from a vendor, we want to be able to run it across our server clusters. And so we're writing software that can run through a virtual machine on commodity hardware, so that we can scale it up and down as we need.
Really becomes a story about managing resources, doesn't it? I mean, I did this interview with Nick Rockwell, who is the CTO of the New York Times, and he's a big believer in serverless, but he dates actually serverless technologies to the days of CDNs. And almost as like what you guys are developing seems like you're a resource-driven platform. You're developing a resource-driven platform that allows you then to do event automation.
Yeah. That sounds right. And we're building it out as a platform so anyone can use the tools that we've created to build their own, edge services based on the platform that we provide.
So your customers then might be actually telcos, or they might be other CDNs, or they could be, companies that are building hardware devices.
Yeah, absolutely. We're not building for a specific audience. It's anyone that's using internet services could use our platform as well.
So what are customers asking for? What are the, this is mostly developer community, I guess you're appealing to, or who are you talking to?
We talk to such a wide variety of customers. We have consumer products even. So we have a consumer VPN. And then, I mentioned Microsoft. We have large enterprises that are doing, very specific things. Customers really what they want is they want security, and it's really hard to do that now. They want to be protected from bad actors who just want to mess with them, like doing DDoS attacks. And they need reliable bandwidth, and you can't always find that through the internet if you have a large global network.
Justin, I could talk to you for hours about this, but I guess I'm going to see you at South by Southwest, so we'll hang out there, and it's good to see you, and I look forward to learning more about the company and the people who are building it. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Listen to more episodes of the New Stack Makers at thenewstack.io/podcast. Please rate and review us on iTunes, like us on YouTube, and follow us on SoundCloud. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.